Arif, you've been dying to come in.
Thanks. I mean, I think we have strayed a little bit off some of the topics, but some of what Hamza said seemed to me to be platitudes, and some of it seemed to make no sense at all. But one thing that I did get was that it's correct to say that there are a lot of things that we don't know, and none of you know it any more than we do, but you give it some divine label, whereas we don't. On the specific arguments, I mean, coming back to your apparent refusal to understand any of the points that Adam was making, if we look at the specific argument concerning the so-called fine-tuning of the universe for life, that is to say, the particular values of certain physical constants is so specific that had it been different by, say, 1 part in 10 to the power of 100 or something, there would have been no life in the universe. That's the argument. That argument assumes that this dispensation would have been very unlikely to have arisen by chance. We have no reason whatever to think that. The only reason to think that something like that is unlikely is if we have some grounds for establishing some particular probability distribution in advance. The only way to establish such a distribution in advance is through repeated trials of universes being created. To date, excuse me, let me finish. To date, we have one universe that we've observed, in which we observe it to have happened. Could one of you please give me some reason, any reason, for thinking that there is a uniform rather than other probability distribution for those constants? Perhaps you'd like to, Reddy, seeing as you raised the argument.
If I can jump in. I mean, you take one of those constants, the explosive force of the Big Bang. If it's the slightest bit weaker, the universe collapses back in on itself almost immediately. If it's the slightest bit stronger, the universe just disperses into thin air. You don't get anything like the complexity that would be necessary for life. The way I see this argument from fine-tuning, and it's the one thing so far that we've actually agreed on both sides, that actually the parameters for life are incredibly narrow. It would be like showing up and seeing a game of cards, watching someone get a dozen royal flushes in a row, and then you know that outcome.
Did we not? Can I just ask Vince? Can I ask you a question? Did we not? The possibility of science is that we evolved to be compatible with that fine-tuning, and that's why we're here.
Well, no, but the
rather
example,
than fine-tuning being creative.
But Nikki, the example that I gave, in terms of the explosive force of the Big Bang, if you just conceptualize it, it's the slightest bit stronger. It literally disperses into thin air.
Okay, Vince,
there's nothing complex.
There's
nothing complex at all. The slightest bit weaker, it actually just collapses back in on itself.
That's all very interesting, but he hasn't answered the question. Can any of you give me a reason for thinking that the distribution of those constants was uniform?
Let Arif make that point.
Let me give you an example. So supposing that, for instance, the first person who examined a snowflake under a microscope looked at it and said, oh, look, it's a beautiful, perfect crystalline structure. Isn't this amazing? I must have a really special snowflake. What's the chances that a snowflake would have this particular structure? Because it's the first one he's seen. There's no reason whatever to think the distribution of patterns in snowflakes is uniform.
We both agree that there could be lots of other types of possible universes that would not include life.
Could be,
on the hypothesis that God does not. On the hypothesis that God does not exist, there's no reason to think that it would be likely that we would get one of the.
Okay, I want to move. This is. Just wait, please.
Nobody has answered my question. It would be interesting if anybody
could. We need to move on, and if we get a chance, we'll come back to the question because it's a good one, and it's a very interesting one, but.